Welcome to the weekly wrap-up of Israel365 News. This is Josh Wander, and I am in the studio today with Adam Elio Berkowitz and Rabbi Julie Weiss to give you the wrap-up of all the news that you need to know. This is a live show. Perhaps this is one of the few shows on earth, news shows, where you can be interactive and you can, since it's a live show, we allow comments. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitch, we're on Periscope. And you can actually write your comments in, and we will try to address them if we can. So we're going to start off with Rabbi Julie Weiss and hear what he has to say about this week's news.
Well, there's been a lot of news. It's been a busy news cycle, of course. Everyone in Israel is still under lockdown to some extent, although, thank God, the coronavirus is pretty much under control here, at least to a large extent. And they're opening things up. We're heading in the right direction. Everyone here is excited about the vaccines that have been discovered, and especially there's a lot of Israeli connections to those vaccines, and you see that some of the ingenuity and the innovation from Israel is going around the world to hopefully help cure the world of this pandemic. I think that the main news item in the land is the visit this week of Secretary of State Pompeo to not only Israel, but to Judea and Samaria. There has been so much talk about sovereignty. The Trump administration has done more to recognize Judea and Samaria than any administration. And Mike Pompeo has been the driving force. We know that he's an evangelical Christian who really is proud of his faith, and his faith has impacted his view of the Middle East and of Israel, and he has done a lot to support the Jewish rights and sovereignty in the land of Israel. Josh, what do you have there?
This is a bottle of wine from the Psagot Winery, which this is for show and tell. This is where Secretary of State Pompeo visited today, and they actually produced a limited run of this wine in his name, Pompeo, because of his recognition, being the first one to recognize the settlements of Judea and Samaria as part of the state of Israel in the world. And we are eternally grateful not only to him and the Trump administration, but they continue to do the unbelievable, what we can, even if they were to have done one thing, it's like we say on Passover, we have this ritual of saying over the Dayenus, that it would have been enough if, and that's what I feel like, because they just keep coming up with more stuff every day.
Eliyahu, what do you think of the significance of the first American Secretary of State to visit the biblical heartland?
I just want to point out that the wine named after Pompeo, it's not just stroking his ego. It's the prophecy that there's a connection between people from outside of Israel, the nations, and the vineyards in the Shomron, in Samaria. So connecting him to that is connecting him to prophecy. And once prophecy starts rolling, it's a freight train. You're just not going to be able to stop this prophecy from going to where it's supposed to go.
That is absolutely true. Unbelievable. The prophecies are unfolding before our eyes. And Israel365 News is the only news source which actually brings the prophecy alive in the current events that are happening every day. And we show you how these prophecies are unfolding before your eyes.
Actually, Josh, we're the first. We're not the only ones. I remember when Mike Pompeo was here, it was just before Purim, and Chris Mitchell of CBN interviewed him. And it started out like a normal interview. And then Mr. Mitchell, who's absolutely amazing, he asked Mike Pompeo, he said, how do you feel about about being a Christian doing this in Israel right now? Do you feel that President Trump is in some way connected to the story of Esther, where he's in the right place at the right time to save Israel? And I saw Mike Pompeo brighten up. He was glowing as soon as he heard that. He said, "Oh yes, as a Christian." So I think you can't write off the prophetic and spiritual aspect of this. What he's doing, yes, it's politics and it's a profession, but man, he's putting his heart and soul into this. He is here as a Christian, as an individual, as a person. I think all the politicians who connect to Israel, it's partly personal and partly professional and very, very personal. I think that's what he's doing here.
Yeah, I just wanted to, somebody, I think, Elio, you alluded to the scripture in Isaiah 61. So I'm reading from the Israel Bible here. Isaiah 61 says that God announces it's going to be a year of favor where the mourners in Zion will be comforted. And it says that they will rebuild the ancient ruins. They will raise up the desolations of old, renew the ruined cities, and strangers shall stand and pasture your flocks, and non-Jews will be your plowmen and your vine trimmers. And it's very explicit. This is one of the great miracles that we're seeing taking place, that it's not only the people of Israel who have returned to the land, but thanks to the support of non-Jews who also recognize God's hand and the miracles that God is performing and are playing in a really important part of that. And so, to us here at Israel365 News, that is really what the visit of Secretary of State Pompeo represents. What else is happening in the news this week, guys?
Ooh, Temple Mount. There's been some really, I think what's happening under the radar is a lot of the focus has been transferred to the Temple Mount. For people who are not as connected to or focused on the Temple Mount as they should be or as they might be, that's really where the focus has turned. It's kind of funny. The Abraham Accords kind of slipped under the radar for a lot of reasons. Perhaps some people didn't want it to be on the focus. But when we go to that, there's a very interesting thing. As a journalist, one of the things I try to do is to learn and report accurately. Whenever you hear journalists say the Temple Mount, the third holiest site in all of Islam, it's so horribly inaccurate. It's scary. And there was a Saudi Arabian journalist, a fairly prominent one, who wrote in one of the most prominent Saudi Arabian newspapers. He wrote about how when you talk about Aqsa Mosque, everyone thinks Aqsa Mosque is the silver dome on Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. Unfortunately, they're now saying also the gold dome and also the whole Temple Mount. But he's saying, as a Saudi Arabian, that that's not accurate. Aqsa Mosque, which literally means the furthest mosque, according to Sunni Islam, is in a place called Al-Jurana, which is near Mecca in Saudi Arabia. And the thing is, it's based on a story in the Quran that Muhammad went to the Far Mosque one night. Which in Al-Jurana, there's the near mosque and there's the far mosque. And what happened was there was a period of time when the Bedouins, they prevented other Muslims. I have it in front of me. The Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik in 691, he rebelled and he prevented the Umayyads in Damascus from making Hajj to Mecca. So what happened was they can't make Hajj to Mecca, and they still had this thing of Hajj. So he said, okay, the real Hajj is to the Far Mosque, in the Far Mosque being on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And they created this mythology surrounding it, saying that the Far Mosque was the Aqsa Mosque, and they built the mosque on the Temple Mount. And that's actually fake. They made it up because of this political situation. And the Sunni Muslims in Saudi Arabia are actually quite angry about this. So Saudi Arabia wants to dispel the whole Aqsa Mosque myth, the Sunni Muslims. And the Palestinians, and the whole concept of Aqsa Mosque being so holy actually arose with Palestinian nationalism. So there's this awakening within the Sunni Muslim world, which includes the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, to say, okay, we're friends with Israel. Let's go to Jerusalem. There's definitely Muslim holy sites, amazing mosques, the Mosque of Ibrahim and everything. But let's be honest, the Aqsa Mosque is not on the Temple Mount. It is not holy to Islam. Let the Jews pray there. So this is huge, that now there's an awakening to open up the Temple Mount for Jews to pray there. And it's not coming from the Jews. It's coming from Saudi Arabia and Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam wants the Jews to pray on the Temple Mount. They're done with the Aqsa Mosque myth. I think that's a huge shift. And now we are actually having the UN and UNESCO perpetuating this myth of Aqsa Mosque by labeling the Temple Mount a holy Muslim site. And I have a feeling that this is going to be the direction of if there's a Biden administration, that's the direction they're going to go in. But the focus and the balance of the Temple Mount is shifting drastically. And it hasn't been so long after the Abraham Accords, but it is shifting as we watch. And that's what I think is happening in the news. So, and
there's
Yes,
been, well,
Go ahead.
this week this was another busy week for the Israeli military. The Israeli army can never rest, but Israel attacked Iranian forces in Syria this week, and at the same time there was a news report from the New York Times that Israel's Mossad was behind the assassination of an ISIS leader, also in Iran. And so Israel is acting quickly in the remaining days of the Trump administration to show just what an evil regime is in place in Iran, and making sure that the Biden people get the message loud and clear.
Yes, in the last 4 years and 2 months of the Trump campaign of their administration, they need to hurry up and get a lot done, because there's a lot of prophecies that need to be fulfilled. And I just on the lines of what Elio is saying, there is actually an ad that came out this week from the national airline of Abu Dhabi, and we'll just show that on the screen. So this caused a lot of controversy because, let's get rid of that. Because what happened was they came up with this ad, and the ads of the national airline of Abu Dhabi had a picture of the Second Temple in it. And according to the local Arabs here, the Second Temple never existed. At least that is the current version. If you look at the old 1923 edition that's put out by the Islamic Trust called the Waqf, they actually write that this is the Temple Mount is the place where Solomon's temple once stood. But today they deny that any of this, they have a revisionist history, and they deny that any of this happened. And when this ad came out, that was immediately pulled because there was so much pushback from the local Arabs over here that they would dare consider the fact that the Second Temple was once on the Temple Mount. And most people are not aware of it, but there is definitely a very contentious fight going on between the Gulf Arabs and the local, what they call Palestinian Arabs, who are on very, very different sides when it comes to many different issues. And one of those main issues is the Temple Mount. And I'm not sure if this ad was done on purpose or not, but it clearly was a poking in the eye of the local Palestinian Arabs to have a ad like that with a temple on it. We look at it, of course, that it's obvious that is the biblical narrative, but that is something which is trying to be changed as we speak. In fact, that is what has been for decades. That is what they have tried to do on the Temple Mount by destroying whatever remains, whatever debris that they have dug up from the Temple Mount. They've destroyed it, and tried to hide it because they want to make sure that nothing comes out that proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that the temple once stood on that land.
I'm wondering about this because the Abrahamic Accords actually did not mention the Temple Mount. So on one hand, I wonder, I'd like to actually sit down. I guess I can't have a couple beers with them because they don't drink beer, but the Muslims in the United Arab Emirates, I'd like to ask them what they really think of the Temple Mount, what they really think of the situation with the Palestinians. One of the great revelations is that peace in the Middle East is not only not dependent on what happens between the Israelis and Palestinians, but that's actually the obstacle to peace, which if Biden does not acknowledge, then we're all in for some really rough sailing. But peace in the Middle East, the situation in the Middle East is not dependent on the Palestinians. And I wonder if what the Emiratis really think of the Palestinians, especially now that when it comes to the Temple Mount, the Palestinian narrative has always been centered and focused on them ruling over the Temple Mount, even to the exclusion of other Muslims. So I wonder where the Emiratis really want this to go. I kind of feel like they're playing a waiting game. They're kind of filling in the X's with very erasable pencil. And when it comes time to actually that they can sidestep the Palestinians, that's what they'll do. And
I was speaking to a friend of mine who was in Dubai this week, and he was mentioning the fact that that a lot of the foreign workers come from around the world, of the Arab world, and many of them are Palestinians. And I was asking what we know that the Emiratis are very ecstatic about the agreement with Israel. I was wondering what the foreign workers, especially the ones that are officially enemies of Israel, whether it be Pakistan or for that matter, the Palestinians, what they think of the agreement. And he said something to me that was very interesting the first time I've heard it, which is that there are a lot of Palestinians that are running away from Dubai because they know that the Israelis are about to come into in mass, and they want to get out before, especially because Israel is going to be coming in with all of their intelligence and their law enforcement. And a lot of these Palestinians, I guess, were wanted by Israelis beforehand, and they ran away to the Gulf states to work. And then now they know that Israel's on their way, so they're all running away either to other Emirates or away from the Gulf altogether.
Something similar to that happened when the borders opened up with Jordan, because Israelis could go to Jordan and all of a sudden they'd be sitting at a table in a restaurant right next to like someone from Damascus or something like that. It leads to a very strange social situation. And in those situations, I'm sorry, the Palestinians come up short just because they
no
have
need to be sorry.
Yeah, okay. They don't bring much to the table. Right. They really don't, and that's
until now. I think what they brought to the table was this myth that if you didn't, as you already mentioned, if we didn't first make peace with the Palestinians, this is the two-state myth, that if we don't first come up with a Palestinian state, then there's no way of having regional peace in the Middle East, and that has been completely disproven by this administration. I think it's very clear at this point that we are able to have peace with regional peace in the Middle East without first having, or without the necessity at all of having, a Palestinian state. What is interesting to me, as people start to believe that Biden is going to be the next president, what's interesting to me is that there are a lot of people on the left, both here in Israel and around the world, that are starting to talk again about a shift in policy and how we are going to have to go back to this two-state solution, which I find amazing, because that is I think it's clear today that we have achieved more peace in the region just in the past couple months than we have had in the past 70 years under this false premise of having a two-state solution.
It sometimes horrifies me on social media that people can talk themselves into the craziest places. I talk to people, I say, come on, Donald Trump, first of all, he hasn't started any new wars. He's lowered the American military presence in foreign nations. I don't know if people are aware, but there was a time when Obama claimed to be living in a peaceful era. War-related deaths around the world went up 80% under him. On his watch, he allowed 300,000 Syrians to be killed. Donald Trump has brought peace, and I've heard people say, "Oh, it's not a real peace. The peace with Saudi, the peace with Dubai, the peace with Bahrain. It's not a real peace." I'm telling you, from where I'm sitting here in the Golan, oh boy, is it real! It is as real as it gets.
They say we weren't at war with them before, but that's a joke, because we weren't at war with Jordan. Jordan, we had a border that was pretty much quiet for 30 years. And all of a sudden, they made peace, and they made the biggest deal out of this peace if anything, we were closer as far as having a cold peace with Jordan than we were with the Gulf states, which were always considered to be the radicals in the region.
I was in Israel when I was 17. It was when the Sinai was given back, when the peace with Egypt was signed. This is way better than even that. That was the first. But I mean, a week after signing it, Israelis are flying to Dubai or flying to Bahrain. I don't know if they're flying to Bahrain, but the UAE.
Not only they're flying, but they're welcome there. I mean, the fact that they use them, and Dr. Kadar used this a number of times, the fact that they're using the language normalization, which is like a bad word for our relations with Israel in the Arab world. That is like a really, really tight, close relationship, and for people to say, jump past the cold peace, past the, even today, Israelis are not welcome, and if they were to go to visit to Egypt or to Jordan, I don't know if many people know this, but if you go as an Israeli today to Egypt or to Jordan, you have to change your license plate. If you're driving over a land border, you have to change your license plate. They say it's for your protection, but you have to change your license plate. They make sure that if you have any Jewish-looking paraphernalia with a head covering or phylacteries like I'm wearing, or anything else that might show that you're Jewish, you have to remove those. Sometimes they're even confiscated at the border. Then there's definitely a feeling of tension once you're in the country. You don't want to walk around with your Israeli passport or show it off or mention to even the people that you're Israeli. It seems like it's the exact opposite of what's going on in the Gulf. We are being welcomed with open arms, and Israelis are definitely welcome, and they're showing that people, and everybody that I know that's been there so far has said that people are just so happy. They're selling Israeli products in the stores there, something which you do not see, even if they're selling it in Jordan and Egypt, you don't see it, prominently displayed with an Israeli flag. So we're talking about a very, very different relationship.
Also, so I've heard two things that are meant specifically as criticism of President Trump. One is, the peace isn't a real peace that he signed, and I'm like, oh boy, is it real. The second thing I've heard is, you see, walking away from the JCPOA, the Iran deal, it didn't work because Iran is arming up. And I look at that, I'm like, come on, you're just getting it all backwards there. The Iran deal, it never worked, not even for 1 minute. First of all, they didn't even have to sign. Second of all, it was never they never ever stopped their ICBM program, not even for a moment. And that's at least as big a threat as the nukes. And they never stopped it. So if Biden goes right back to the Iran deal, I think what's going to happen is, something, Israel's going to be fine. We are going to be fine. We know how it's going to end up. The end is written. We see it. We'll be fine. And I feel perfectly safe in Israel. But the problem is, if Biden gets in bed with Iran again, if he greenlights their nuclear deal, if he gets in bed with China, America is going to find itself isolated from a good chunk of the world. And not only isolated, but they're going to find themselves a lot weaker than they've ever been before. None of the Gulf states are going to deal with America. And a lot of the people who are being threatened by China are also not going to deal with America.
We have somebody asking a question, which I think is a very valid question, which is, what is up with Bibi congratulating Biden? And that's a very sensitive topic. I don't shy away from sensitive topics, because on one hand, you can imagine, he continues, after everything Trump has done, he means, you can imagine that Bibi is in a very difficult position right now. The world pretty much as one has come out and spoken about Biden being the next president. And the concern obviously is what will happen if Biden indeed becomes the president. Will there be a backlash because of our very close connection that we held for the past 4 years and perhaps longer with the Republican Party and with the Trump administration? So that is the concern, that definitely the Democratic Party shows signs of being openly anti-Israel. They are bringing on more representatives in Congress and in Senate that are openly blatantly anti-Israel. And the concern is that the position that Israel has always taken was that America is the greatest ally of Israel, and Israel is the greatest ally of America, regardless of what administration happens to be in power at the time. And I think that he's just hedging, to answer the question, I think he's hedging his bets, that he figures that if Trump gets in, is reelected again, then everything is good. If Biden gets in, we have to start doing some emergency management. What are your thoughts?
I want to point out that just a few miles from where I'm sitting, there is a Trump Heights, an actual beginnings of a city named after
Eliel's in the Golan Heights, for those that don't know.
I can guarantee you 1,000%, and you can tell me I'm wrong if I end up being wrong, but I don't think I will be, and I'm almost positive I won't be. There will never, ever, ever be a Biden Heights in Israel. Never. Okay.
Well, you can look for the Obama Heights or the Clinton Heights or the Carter Heights, and you won't find them either. So
right.
Maybe in the Palestinian Authority.
Exactly. Okay. The point, oh my gosh. They're already actually in Iran. You could go to Iran and find Biden Town. Okay. You'd love him. Okay. The point being that what we've seen over the last 4 years is more than politics. What we're seeing is the manifestation of a deep spiritual connection. People have become polarized. So what we're seeing is that it's not an alliance between America and Israel based on signed pieces of paper or how do you say kedayut? Something that's it's good for us now. It's worthwhile. What we're talking about is something that goes much, much deeper, and it's only become manifested under Trump. I think that friendship is a real friendship. It's not a friendship of, oh, it's good for us now. When Netanyahu speaks to Biden, it's like talking to your friend who's smacking you in the back of the head the same time that he's saying he likes you. It's not the same kind of alliance, not the same kind of friendship. Actually, Netanyahu didn't call him and congratulate Biden. He sent him, it was on Twitter or something. It was not a face-to-face convo. It was just that way. Whereas with Trump, if he wins, we're going to throw a big party for him in Jerusalem. Okay, it's personal. It's not business. With Biden, it's business. And I think that's the big difference. And it's a much deeper spiritual connection and personal.
If I'm pronouncing the name right, Oyan writes that he thinks that Bibi showed himself weak. He should have stood with friend of Israel, President Trump. Again, much of Israel believes, just like you're saying, but Bibi is in a very difficult position. Also, internally, he's going through a lot. What people are witnessing in the United States with the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa riots that are going on throughout the cities in the U.S., there's a similar phenomena happening here on the streets of Jerusalem, almost on a weekly basis, demonstrating against the prime minister. So he has his own internal struggles. He has people that are trying to take advantage of what's going on, the uncertainty around the world, and because of what's happening in the court systems here. There is a lot, especially the anarchists. There are a lot of people that are trying to attach themselves to this and utilize it in order to overthrow the current government that we have here. So everybody is trying to be very diplomatic. Again, here on Israel365 News, we try to speak real, and we try to tell you how it is. And from our perspective, from my perspective at least, Even though I disagree with Bibi having come out and congratulated Biden, I still understand totally why he did it. And who knows, if I was prime minister, I may have done the same, because he's put in a very difficult position between a rock and a hard
Also,
place.
if you compare that, we were speaking about Pompeo. If you compare that to how the Pope was ecstatic and sent blessings, even he stopped a little short of saying, you're going to be the next president. He stopped a little bit short of that, but not by much. Though there were cardinals that came out and said that the Pope was ecstatic, and that actually went deeper. We were speaking about Pompeo. Pompeo was denied a meeting with the Pope not so long ago. I think it was in September. And the reason they gave was, we don't want to involve ourselves in campaigning and politics. But the real reason was Pompeo was coming to talk about China and their human rights violations. The Vatican is aligning with China and allying with China, becoming their friends and working with them. I don't want to speculate on the reasons behind that, but they're coming out very, very explicitly in favor of China, despite the gross humanitarian violations. And yet Biden is okay with it. And it's crazy that the church is okay with Biden, because a lot of Catholics are not happy about that, because Biden is very pro-abortion, and Kamala Harris has been caught a few times saying really scary things. She says a woman should be allowed to have an abortion whenever she wants. And that pretty explicitly is late-term abortion. And
teenagers, whenever you want.
Exactly. No parents. Strangely enough, agenda that has been aligned or attached to abortion is now euthanasia. Euthanasia is very closely related to socialized medicine. Every country that has legalized euthanasia has socialized medicine. So I'm wondering, Catholics, the Pope comes out and shakes this guy's hand. Biden's met with the Pope twice. We haven't had a Catholic president since JFK, but I don't understand. I can understand separating your own politics from your religion, but to that extent where you can advocate for late-term abortions if you're in any way a religious person, I don't get it. I don't get it.
What I find fascinating, Elio, is that people have a problem with Catholics that are actually adhere and really honor and believe in their religion and their faith, as if when they speak about the Supreme Court that has a number of Catholic members now, and they shun them and they say how terrible it is that they are so religious and they follow their religion. But when it comes to Biden, he's the supposedly the good Catholic who actually doesn't care one bit about his religion.
It's the same thing with Jews. Jews are great as long as they hate Israel. That was very prominent in the Clinton administration. She surrounded herself with self-hating Jews, anti-Israel Jews. Biden also kind of does that a bit, and it's deeply disturbing. It's like you can be religious as long as you're not religious, and that is disturbing. I find, okay, you don't want people to throw their religion on you and to suppress you with their religion, but at the same time, I don't want secular people, anti-religious people, throwing their beliefs on me. Why is it not okay for a religious person to say I object to abortion, and it is okay for a not religious, anti-religious Supreme Court judge to rule that there has to be abortion? Why is that okay? That's oppression. That's suppression.
Or why is it okay that they can use U.S. Tax dollars in order to pay for abortions and take that from people that obviously have religious objections to that? That is a serious question. There was a comment here that was made on YouTube about leftists are starting to talk about blacklisting Trump supporters, and this is a very dangerous path that they are suggesting, because it is what every communist regime does. Yes, I mean, there's no question that we are feeling it. We are feeling it. And I'm a little bit conflicted about this. I don't know how well your feelings, Elio, are, but I lean somewhat libertarian, and Twitter and Facebook. These are private companies, and they can choose what their policies are. We should not be dictating. Of course, there are antitrust. You could say that they have a monopoly and they can't do that. That's another discussion. But the question is that they are private companies. They can censor, they can blacklist as they want. The problem is when they are the monopoly and they are controlling basically the information that comes out to the public. What can be done now? I know there are a lot of people that are running to MeWe and Parler and all sorts of alternatives, but they're not going to have the same impact that YouTube and the Facebook and Twitter have. So what are your thoughts on that? How could this be written? I know that the Senate has had hearings and they've discussed it, but I'm not sure exactly what can be done about their monopoly with regards to information.
As clearly a person who is drawn right now to the political right wing, libertarian and all that, all I can say is thank God I'm religious. Why? Because they're controlling minds, they're controlling information, and that's a little harder to do with me because, and with you, I mean, look at you, you're wearing tefillin. We know who the boss is. Don't try to tell me what the truth is. I've got a bigger boss telling me the truth, and that gives me a big edge in this information. Was it in Isaiah? In Isaiah, they say in the end of days, people will go looking for truth and they won't find it. And that's what we're living through. One of the scary things in the Senate hearings, I'd highly recommend watching them. The Republicans are actually doing an amazing job, is that the Republicans are calling for less censorship. Is it article, which article is it that they need to change? Article 120, 230. There's a specific thing that gives the internet companies an exemption. They can't be sued because they are a provider like the telephone company and not a media source. So what's scary is I wasn't aware of it until the hearings, that the Republicans are calling for less censorship. When Twitter censored the New York Post, I was just floored, because that's KGB, that's Pravda, that's mind control. And Jack Dorsey was entirely unrepentant when he was brought in front of the Senate. He was just, okay, we made a mistake, whoops. And it's like, but you're still making the mistake weeks later? Oh, no, not really. Well, yes, you are. What's scary is that the Democrats in these hearings where they're facing the internet giants, their take on it is you need to be doing more censoring. You need to be censoring all hate speech. You need to be censoring, what is this? Climate denial should be censored also. That was also raised up in the Senate. That's scary. Climate denial is science. Isn't science a matter of questioning? So I think, it's very scary. There is going to be the fact that the left wing, they do want consequences. They want control. And they are not going to stop. When you mentioned about blacklisting people, that's already happening. Facebook, Twitter, they found out that there's a secret tool that they use to coordinate their censorship. There's a secret tool that they use that just came out in the Senate. More power to the Republicans for digging it out. There was a whistleblower, and they take down, if you're too conservative and making too much of an influence, they're going to take you down. I'm very scared. One day they're going to take down Ben Shapiro. They're going to take down who was the guy they took down? The guy who screams a lot. But it's censoring the news, and the news is opinion these days. So they're censoring, and they are already listing people, though it's not a blacklist like you would think. They're doing it on Facebook. That's a censorship. That's a blacklist, and it's already being done. That's scary.
It definitely is, and I know that I've already been warned that my personal Facebook at Joshua Wander is going to be taken down, and for doing nothing. Same thing with the Twitter. I think it's just a matter of time. I'm hoping that if the Trump administration continues for another 4 years, that they will be able to drain the swamp a little bit more, and be able to. Yes,
that's something that Trump stumbled on that I think is amazing. There's the 7 Noahide laws. One of them is to establish justice. You have to have courts. And Trump, without going out hunting for bear, without looking to really stick it to the people who stuck it to him, just by virtue of him standing there as an outsider, he's become such a target, and they shoot themselves in the foot when they try to target him. The FBI pushed and pushed and pushed, and now we discover the FBI is rotten. Clinton tried to throw something on Trump, and then we found out she was rotten. So now we see that there was a lot of voter fraud, but because they pushed it with him and he doesn't give up, God bless him, I don't know how he does it, he doesn't give up, all this injustice was just discovered, came to light because he was standing there. God bless him.
That's what people love about him, that he's not a politician.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that, and you mentioned it before, the vast majority of Jews, for example, in the United States are secular. And therefore, they don't think about religion or Israel when they're voting, and they vote to the left. They vote for the Democratic Party almost across the board. And what's interesting is every administration before Trump has pandered to that group because that is the largest voting bloc when it comes to Jews. On the other hand, the Trump administration immediately embraced the Orthodox Jews, which are just a tiny fraction of the Jews in America, and said that we're going to be with you because we know that the truth is with you, even if it's going to cost us votes, which I thought was absolutely incredible.
So that's the tricky things about blessings. Without a blessing, you can get $1 million, but if you don't have the blessing, you'll be poor tomorrow. Okay, Donald Trump, if he's going for the blessing, it may look like he's getting the smaller slice of the pie, but if he gets the blessing, that smaller slice of the pie will be the important slice. And I think that's what we're looking at. He's been getting short end of the stick, stick for the last 4 years. That's okay. It works for him. God bless him. They keep trying to shoot him, and they shoot themselves. I think that's blessing. He's got a blessing.
So, are we expecting any interesting events coming up this coming week? I caught you on
like I said,
you're the biblical prophecy person, so look at the prophets and let us know what's going to happen next week. I know that, by the way, in a couple hours there is going, I don't know if you heard this, but President Trump has called for a major news briefing in a couple hours where he says that the tide is turning, and he has some very important news. I mentioned on one of my posts on my private on my personal page, I mentioned it's like having a bell curve, and we're like right on top of the bell curve, and all the people think that they're going up forever, but we talked about flattening the curve when it came to Corona. So the curve is being flattened, and slowly but surely we're starting to go over the other side. And I think there's going to be a complete meltdown once people start to realize that Trump is not giving up, and hopefully he will succeed in the end.
I'll be honest, and some people might not like this, but I was starting to despair. I was starting to say, "Oh, there was no fraud." Oh, but you know something? What's her name? Sidney Powell, the lawyer that Trump brought in. I don't know if you know, she was the lawyer that went in after Flynn had already pled guilty, after the FBI totally shafted him, after he was, they were polishing up the handcuffs for this guy and polishing the bars for his cell. And she walked in and she forced the FBI to cough up information that they were hiding. And, she's got that Southern accent, but God bless her. This woman, if I ever needed a lawyer, I'd want her. She is tough, and I saw an interview with her, and she looks like she hasn't slept in a week. She says she's bringing out the Kraken, and you know something? I believe her. I
wouldn't be surprised if this was all planned. There was somebody on my feed that was saying that the Democrats are playing checkers while the Trump administration is playing three-dimensional chess. I think they're it could be even they planned some of these some of these court cases to be thrown out just in order to
I've heard that,
get the Democrats not thinking that they don't have a chance, and then they're going to pull out the big guns. I mean, we'll have to see.
I've heard that, and not as an allegory. I've heard that from lawyers who've said, this is the way it's done. They're doing it right. So I wouldn't be surprised. And Trump, God bless him. It works. The Russian collusion thing was in his face for so long, and he played that. He played that totally right.
No, he's not articulate, so many people think that he's not intelligent, which is not true at all. He is a businessman, and he knows how to play a game, and he's doing it. I think he's playing everyone. That's my personal opinion. I think that this is all.
I watched the debate with Biden. Biden has been in politics his whole life. The guy doesn't know how to tell the truth, because the truth, people don't want to hear it. So he says these things. Oh no, I love everyone. Well, no, I'm not going to ban fracking. Yes, I'm going to ban fracking. No, I'm again not. In the same sentence, he said, no, I'm not going to do the new Green Deal. I'm going to do my deal, which is the Green Deal. And I'm like, Trump reminds me of every nasty boss I've ever had. He'll look at a waiter and say, you're fat, you're ugly, don't go in the dining room until you lose weight. I worked in kitchens for a long time. He'll tell you the truth that you don't want to hear. And I remember when he came back and he said, oh, we got to rethink this NATO thing. He was right. And the left wing went insane, but he was right. How do you argue with that? Time after time, when he says things that they jump on, I'm like, the guy's right. He's telling the truth. And when they say that he said awful things, he never said it. Biden reminds me of every boss I've ever had who was so sweet and so nice and never gave me my paycheck. Okay, he's horrible. He's horrible. He says he says it in the same way, and he learned also from Obama, who did the same thing. Obama was also he was so good at talking to the media, but the problem was then the media says sweet things that are lies, and you don't get the truth. So I think this prophecy in Isaiah of looking for the truth, we're living through it now, and the people who are holding on to Hashem and know that God is the boss, they're going to be able to say, this is the truth. You're not telling me the truth. And that's why they're attaching to Trump. He's telling the truth.
We're getting a lot of comments, which we love, and but we have to wrap it up. So let me just say that unless you have something else to talk about,
no,
I know that we have coming up in another let's see, another 2 hours. We're going to be having our weekly webinar that's going to be live streamed over here from Rabbi Pinchas Winston. He's going to be speaking about a number of different subjects, very fascinating subjects. So definitely tune in for that. And I think that we will wrap it up here. We thank everybody for coming on. For those that are appreciating that like this idea, and we're sort of grappling with this idea of doing this weekly wrap up of the news. If you enjoyed what you listened to, please let us know. Write a comment, send us a note, send us an email. Tell us that you like this, and we'll continue it. If we see that this is not something that our listeners are interested in, then we'll try something else. But this is we're here for you, and we're trying to make it work to the best that we can, and the best thing that's for you guys, because we're doing it for you. So we thank you for joining with us today. Thank you, Eliyahu, for joining us from all the way from the Golan Heights. This is Josh Wander signing off from Jerusalem.
The prophet Isaiah says in chapter 40, "Comfort, comfort my people, O Israel." And friends, we have a special opportunity to not only comfort the people of Israel, but to comfort the Holocaust survivors whose health is failing and their needs are increasing. And please, please, I implore you to partner with Israel365 in order to provide comfort to the Holocaust survivors in Israel today.